Before we kick off the podcast, which is a Q&A for me this week, I got a question after I recorded the podcast that I wanted to answer. Holly from Detroit, hey Holly, asked if I felt like I had ever sacrificed for my husband's career. I never looked at it as a sacrifice at all because every job that I ever left, it was my decision. He never pressured me or, asked me to do it. It was strictly something that I wanted to do. And I can honestly say that every time I left a job, we ended up in a better position, whether maybe it was because he made more money or it was better for our relationship because we had more time together. So the short answer is no, I've never looked at it as a sacrifice. Hi, my name is Stacey Bell Lynn. I spent 20 years working in local news, and 13 years ago, I married an NFL player turned coach, Anthony Lynn, and joined the world of NFL super wives. I've always loved hearing about the life behind the headlines. It's where you find the common thread that connects us. That's what I want to do here. My husband played and coached for the Broncos and 49ers. He's currently the running backs coordinator for the Commanders. We've moved 6 times across the country for his various jobs. When I first met my husband, I didn't know anything about football. I just loved the commercials and the snacks. Well, trust me, that's changed. In my new NFL world, the wives became my family and confidants. It is a sisterhood that transcends teams and rivalries. In each episode, I'll talk with a significant other of a player or coach, the football wives who hold it all together. We'll get real and give you a behind-the-scenes glimpse of it all. This is the world that I want to share with you. Welcome to Super Wives of the NFL, their inside stories. Let's kick it off. Hi, and thanks for joining me for the latest edition of Super Wives of the NFL. I am Stacey Bell Lynn. I'm solo this week. So my guest, Deanna Ingram, she was scheduled to be my guest. She had something come up, but I do want to have her on at some point again to talk about their sickle cell foundation. They're with the Washington Commanders, so hopefully we can get her back. But after a cancellation, my producer thought this might be a good opportunity for you to reintroduce yourself to the audience. So once again, Stacey Bell Lynn. Let's see, I'm an introvert, so I do not like talking about myself. I'm a very good listener. I'm a pretty good presenter, broadcaster, very good. I'm going to own that, but I don't like talking about myself. So this is a little awkward for me. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions. We have some questions, but I'll just dive right in by saying I was a news anchor for many, many, many years, worked in Texarkana, Texas, Shreveport, Louisiana, then Cleveland, and then Long Island here in New York, and then worked in New York for NBC News, NBC4. So that's kind of like that is the trajectory of my career. I'm from a really small town in Arkansas called Osceola. It's about 50 miles outside of Memphis. I was one of those people who from an early age always knew what I wanted to do for a living. There's never a question that I wanted to be a news anchor. I grew up in a home where every day my parents watched the news, they read the newspaper. We only had one television for the longest. And so my dad watched 60 Minutes faithfully every Sunday. So very much influenced by current events, Black history, all things growing up. And just, I always wanted to be the first person if we had to recite something in English class. I was the first person who rushed to the front of the class to start talking. You do your Easter speech. That's a big deal in the South in church growing up. I always had the long Easter speech that I memorized and knew by heart. So I always knew what it was I wanted to do for a living. Got very lucky or very blessed. When I was in college, I went to the University of Central Arkansas. And I met this lady there who worked for the local PBS station where I interned. Back in the day when you did television internships, you didn't get paid. So she, I met her on campus and she said, come down to the PBS station interview. And I did an internship. And from there, she turned me on to the National Association of Black Journalists, NABJ. And so I was blessed enough to get, back then, they did maybe 6 paid journalism spots. And so I got one for the summer at a station, Wave in Louisville, Kentucky. It's funny how you haven't thought about things for years and they just come back to you. But yeah, so I interned at the TV station in the summer. Like I said, very, introverted, very quiet. And as I was leaving, the person who was doing my evaluation for the summer pulled me aside and said, you're a really good writer, you're good on camera, good at what you do, but you're a little quiet. So when you go back to school for this last semester, maybe you look at becoming a waitress, because that's going to force you to come out of your shell a little bit and learn how to talk to people to make your tip money. So I did. I was a waitress my last semester of college, at, some people called it Shoney, some people called it Big Boy, but yeah, that's where I worked my last semester of college. And then upon graduation, I got a job at this station in Texarkana, Texas. Didn't pay a whole lot, but it was in the same state, not the same state because I'm from Arkansas, but very close to where my family was. So I worked in Texarkana for about 2 years, and I will never forget this, $13,000. My check was every 2 weeks, $406, which was, I think, really the norm back then for starter pay. So did that, was like, I got to get out of here because I really cannot even afford to eat. This is not going to be it for me. Um, so yeah, left there, went to Shreveport, Louisiana, spent about, I think, 4 years in Shreveport, and ultimately got the job in Cleveland, Ohio, for WJW Fox 8, the Fox affiliate in Cleveland. And I spent 13 years in Cleveland. And Cleveland was really, in a lot of ways, it is my second home. I've spent the most time there, second only to the place where I grew up and went to high school. But 13 years, I watched my friends be single and get married and have babies. And, because I was single for the majority of the time there, I had friends who were like family. We did Thanksgiving and Christmas together. And if I was sick, people came over to check on me and walk my dog. So that was a place to me that for the longest really felt like home. So that's where I met Anthony. I've talked about that before, but I got a question from Lindsay in Cleveland, and it was, she asked if I ever missed Cleveland. Um, I am really a be where your feet are planted person, probably to a fault. I don't spend a lot of time looking back. I worry more than I should, but I miss the people there, and I miss the camaraderie and the sense of family that we had at the station when I worked there. And I absolutely miss the food. Like, there's some good, I don't know that I've ever had a casada cake outside of Cleveland. So yes, I miss the camaraderie at the station, the people, and the food. But I don't spend a lot of time, looking back, like, wanting something that was 10 years ago or a time that was 2 years ago. I am very much to a fault. This is where I am. This is what I'm doing. It's what I'm focusing on. Like, to the degree sometimes that I feel like some of my friends probably think that I have forgotten about them or kicked them to the curb. And it's not intentional. It's just, I'm very, like, singularly focused on what my life is right now. So yeah, so worked in Cleveland for a very long time. When Anthony and I got together, I moved eventually to work at News 12 Long Island, which was a great experience. It was a great foot in the door, to the New York, the tri-state area. I met some of the nicest people out there. I feel like I spent 3 years out there, three, but just wonderful people. I don't know if I would have enjoyed the area as much had I not, like, gotten that solid footing at News 12. So did that, and then a couple of years into that was offered the opportunity to come and work at WNBC in New York, which nobody would turn that down. And yeah, worked there. I was there on and off, I think, for 4 years, just back and forth, on and off, doing different stints. I left at one point because we moved to Buffalo. Then I came back for a short while and started doing weekends only. And then about 6 months into that, I came back full time. So great friends, great people there. That is just, the once in a lifetime opportunity experience that I would never trade, really, for anything. So I got to look at some of these questions. Okay, bear with me here because I can't see, because we did get some great questions in. Okay, so I talked about where I'm from, how I always wanted to do this. How did I meet Anthony? We're both living in Cleveland. He tells his story better than I do. He's a much better storyteller than I am. But we're both living in Cleveland. He was recently divorced, and I was single, obviously. And we had some mutual friends who set us up on a blind date. And, people say blind dates never work, but ours did. So that was how we met. I don't think at the time, and I know he wasn't because he says this, he wasn't really looking for anything serious, but oh well, he got lucky. No, I shouldn't say that. Don't tell him I said that. But yeah, so that's how we met. And we dated for 2 years, then got engaged. And by the time we got engaged, he had come here to New York, New Jersey, and was working here with the Jets. And yeah, no, you know what? We were just dating when he came here, because I remember he tells the story too of deciding that he wanted to propose, and he asked Brian Schottenheimer, who was the coordinator, for some time off work to go and buy my ring so he'd have it when we saw each other. So yeah. And so shortly after we got married, I moved here, and we, started life in New Jersey, started life together. And that was really my introduction to the NFL world. When we were dating in Cleveland, I had just a slight introduction because he had a group of really good friends that we would hang out with at their houses. And I've had Carol Sullivan. I always want to call her Carol Chandler because she was Carol Chandler when she was on the show at WKYC in Cleveland. But we would hang out a lot with Carol Sullivan and Angel and Alfredo Roberts. So that was kind of my introduction to the world of the NFL. I didn't go to a lot of games there. I maybe only went to one or two. So I didn't really get what it was like to, hang out with all of the other women, because we were just kind of casually dating at that point. And I think for me, I felt like, I'm not a fiance, I'm not a wife. I don't want to like immerse myself into this. I'll just come to a game, but I'm not a part of this thing yet. So by the time we got to the Jets, that was when, I really started to hang out with a lot of people and meet, friends. And we formed like just such a good, and I've often talked about on the podcast, like what a great group of people that was. And then from there, it just, grew. A few of us left a few years later and went to the Bills, and you meet more people. And yeah, so that was really my introduction. It was a little bit different for me because I didn't know a lot about football. I'd followed football, of course, but I didn't know a lot about it. Like in my household, people were basketball fans. So that was much more the sport that I kind of understood. I had paid to go to Cavs games. I had never paid to go to a football game. Yeah, so that was kind of my introduction to his world, and just have met, so many of the great women that I consider to be friends, that I respect, many of whom I've had on the podcast. So that was my introduction to the NFL world. All right, so let me get another question because I remember nothing. Someone asked me, and I do remember this, how I decided where to split my time, because we have a full-time retirement home, and then we keep an apartment wherever he's living and working. And it's really easy, like in the off season, I'm at home more. And then during the season, I spend more time, like right now, with the Commanders in the DMV area where he is. So yeah, that's a pretty easy thing to figure out. I got another question about, moving. What is it like? Do I do all of the moving? And yes, I pretty much do. By the time that he gets another job, we'll say it's just late January, early February. Well, he has to go and report to whatever the new team is. So I am typically I'm stuck in Buffalo for 2 months, packing up the apartment, working with the movers while he goes and he's working. So, I joke that he thinks we have little people who come in and do everything. Now, he has a lot of the heavy lifting to do in terms of like, maybe getting things organized when the boxes get there. But yeah, I do most of the heavy lifting with the movie. So yeah, that was another question. I wish I could have memorized some of these questions. Someone wanted to know, what was it like setting up a home in various cities? Ooh, that's a good question. I don't even know if I think about it. You just do it. Typically, he will select the area that we're going to live in because it has to work for his commute to work. And honestly, he spends more time at the place than I do. So I try to get everything out of boxes. I'm not really big on hanging a lot of pictures because I don't want to deal with, having to take the pictures down if we move a year or two later, because that's happened before. But I just try to make it feel like a home and feel just a place that gives especially him comfort and respite when he comes in from work, and all of the crazy things that this life entails. And just wherever we are, I try to make it homey. We're going to have our things, we're going to feel relaxed, it's going to be decorated a little bit. We'll put pictures on a bookshelf maybe, but I don't do a lot of stuff on the walls because it's just too much to deal with, when you have to move. And because we do have movers, but I have to get everything organized. So yeah, that's how I try to go about setting up a home for us. I mean, I have friends who go all out, and you'll show up at their house and it looks like they've lived there for 20 years. Like, that's not necessarily me. Oh, another question. This was a good one. How long after we were married did I stop my job as a news anchor? We had been married for, I want to say 10 years. Yeah, it was a while. No, 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 no. Let me take that back. I quit for a year or two, a year, when we moved to Buffalo. So we had been married initially, I think about 3, 4 years when I quit for the first time, because we moved to Buffalo and I took a year off while we were in Buffalo because, quite frankly, I just, had done the whole driving to work in blizzards in Cleveland. I did not want to do that in Buffalo. And honestly, I just wanted to be free to, to do all of the things that, we had the opportunity to do through the team. Because when you're working, especially with my job, you missed out on a lot because the news is always on. It's on Christmas, it's on New Year's, it's on every Friday night. I worked some weekends. So I missed out on a lot of the fun things that, the teams would do. Like, some teams still do this, but back in the day, a lot of teams did a wives trip where you would get to travel to one of the games with the guys. And some teams will allow you to travel the wives on the team plane, which is a big deal because we don't normally fly private. They do. I missed out on 3 wives trips because I always had to go to work. And I know that's a first world problem, but you want to enjoy some of the perks of this lifestyle. So, yeah, because I did not work the year we were in Buffalo, I got to do the London trip with the Bills, which was so much fun. They really set it out for us. And there were just other fun things. Like, I think one weekend they did a weekend, a girls' trip to Miami. I got to do all of those things because I wasn't at work all of the time. So the short answer to the question, the first time I quit, I think it was 3.5 years into our marriage, went back to work for a couple of years, and then eventually quit right around the time COVID hit and shut everything down in New York because we were living separately, and I wanted us to be in the same place together. So another question I got was, do I travel a lot in my role as a coach's wife? I do not. I don't go to away games. I never really have. I mean, I may go once in a while if there's another group of women going, or if I know somebody in the city that I want to go visit. That's really it for me. I'm not one of those people who goes to every away game because I just don't like being in visiting stadiums. I had a bad experience many, many years ago in a visiting stadium. I'm not going to say where. Um, and they don't really, they don't, not that they should, but when you go to a visiting stadium, you're probably not getting the best seats. It's just not fun to me. I honestly would rather sit home and watch it from my couch where my drinks are free and I can eat everything that I want and I don't have to deal with traffic. Plus, and I've had this happen too when I've gone to a few away games. It's not always a given that you can fly out of that city the same night, depending upon where you're going. So it's just not a fun experience being stuck in a city where your team just lost and you have to go back to the hotel and everybody in the hotel is celebrating, and you just want to get home as quickly as possible. So I don't go to a lot of away games, not at all. Let me see another question that I got. Any words of wisdom that I'd want to share for being a part of this lifestyle? Mm. Just embrace it. Don't come into the lifestyle. And I think this is with anything. I would say this for my job or any career as well. Just embrace it and do all of the things, meet all of the people, have all of the experiences, because, things really are for a reason and a season. So just do it. Go in, have fun, meet people. All you really need is one person to be cool with. Meet other people. Someone else asked me what was a primer for me coming into this lifestyle. And this was another thing Carol Chandler Sullivan and I talked about. I feel like the role is very similar to the role you have, in a newsroom as an anchor or a reporter. I can't explain it, but there just are a lot of similarities. You have people from various places and backgrounds who are thrown together, and you're learning each other and coming together for a common cause. And even though on paper you don't have a lot of things in common, you have the commonality of rooting for the team, and supporting the guys on the team. So I would just say go in and enjoy it and be open to meeting people and having all of these fun experiences, because it really is for a lifetime. Um, I wanted to talk about this. Another one of the things that, we did, Anthony years ago decided that he wanted to start the Lynn Family Foundation, which is our family foundation. And my stepdaughter, Danielle, runs it and does a phenomenal job. So coming up in June, I think it's June 22nd and 23rd, we're having a golf tournament. The tee off party, I guess is what y'all say in golf, because I don't golf, but the tee off party is June 22nd, which is a Sunday. And then with the golf tournament that Monday morning, June 23rd at Stonebriar in Frisco. So I'm going to put some information on my website and on this Instagram so that you can have all the information, direct you to our family website if anybody wants to participate in that. People who golf say it's a lot of fun. We've done it before. Just the event itself was fun for me. And our foundation benefits, this event is going to benefit Hugs Cafe, which is a cafe in McKinney, Texas, that is near and dear to us because our niece works there. But it's a cafe that is staffed by adults with disabilities. So it gives adults with disabilities the opportunity to have a job and meet people and interact and just, gain and work on their sense of self-worth. So we benefit many different organizations with our foundation, but the golf tournament is going to benefit Hugs Cafe in McKinney. So I'm going to try to twist Anthony's arm and get him to come on and talk a little bit more about, our foundation and giving back. This was always something he wanted to do in a big way that was important to him. So I know many of you know, and maybe you don't. Many years ago, we took a trip to Africa because we helped a friend of ours through our foundation build a school in Africa. And we built the school and I think a playground and a library. We have not been back, but that is on our calendar to try and get back there and see those kids. It's right outside of Tanzania. So we do that. And then we have the Betty D. Gonzalez Foundation, which is for motherless daughters, girls who don't have a mom figure in their life, maybe because she's passed or maybe because of, just circumstances. That's another organization we help, as well as Young Warriors, which is men who don't have a father figure in their lives, and they're based out in LA. So we have a handful of different organizations that we help, but our golf tournament this year, which is June 22nd and 23rd, is specifically benefiting Hugs Cafe. So, if you want to sign up for that, foursomes, that's going to be a fun event because we always do that. So yeah, I think I have talked about myself as much as I feel comfortable doing. This is so not me, but I want to look and make sure I did not forget any other questions. Oh, Natalie. Hey, Natalie. She's so sweet. She says, what was one of the most memorable NYC stories you ever covered? I can never think of most memorable when people put me on the spot. What was the most memorable NYC story that I ever covered? I don't know. I don't know what that says about me that I don't remember. Maybe it was, there was a blackout, and it wasn't like the big blackout, but there was a blackout, and it was memorable because we couldn't do the news from the studio that night. All of the light, we had a generator, but we couldn't do the news from the set. And I think Andrew had to basically anchor from out in the field where he was. That was one of the most like, really, we can't even go on. But that's the thing about news in New York. There is always something going on. And when I log off, I'm going to think about what, the most memorable thing I ever covered was. This was another good one too. What other interests do I have? Just typical stuff. I'm a big reader. I love to read mostly fiction books. I want to escape and relax. Although right now I am reading Atomic Habits, which is very good. And I was late to the party, but I just read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Ooh, that was a good book. So yeah, reading, I like a glass of wine, although I can't drink wine like I used to. And, traveling, I love taking my trips. People always say, do you miss working? I miss, once again, the camaraderie. I miss that when things happen, you are in a room with a myriad of people from different backgrounds and different places in the world and the country, and you gain all this perspective from people. I miss that, but I really do like having the flexibility of my time and being able to travel and, spend time with my parents and my sisters and see our grandkids and, be there when Anthony needs things. So the short version is I miss some things about it, but I don't know that I would ever want to do it full time again. Not that anybody, has asked me. Let me put that out there too. But I will say I've been very blessed in every city that we have lived in. I have had the opportunity to work again. And let me not say the opportunity. I have had someone reach out and say, hey, are you interested? DC, where we are now, might be the first time that I have not had someone reach out and say, hey, do you want to come to work? Everywhere else we've lived, LA, Buffalo, Detroit, there's people have had a willingness to hire me. So I'm really grateful for that. But I want to do something. I'm really enjoying doing this podcast and some of the, great guests that I've had on it. So if you know anybody who's a coach or a player's wife who would like to do this, let me know, DM me, tell me, because I love telling these stories. And I think that there is a market and a platform for it. So that's what I'm enjoying doing right now. I'm open to other things, but I like having the flexibility of just being able to do me and do us. So yeah, I think I have rambled for as long as I can about myself. So thanks for listening. Superwives of the NFL. I'm Stacey Bell Lynn, wherever you find your podcast, and we'll be back with a new episode soon. Okay, thanks for listening, and thanks in advance for liking this podcast and leaving a review. Meet you here next week.